Yeah. This is only a test. Right on, my brother. Good to see you. Welcome, everybody. All you music-impassioned audio disciples to the 5th episode of the Platinum Legacy. We are gathered here today in holy audio union to learn, observe, and most importantly, ask questions. This is what you were supposed to do.
Yes.
So operators are standing by, all of you. So pop your questions into YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, whatever application your drip is flowing from. We are blessed to have the sonic provocateur, mixing and mastering engineer, known for David Guetta, Diplo, Major Lazer, all sorts of amazing artists, Luca Pretolesi with us.
Marek, your Italian accent is actually on point. When you say my name, actually you hit it. Like, that's it. Yeah, man. Well, good to see you. I'm always feel a little jealous because we are talking. It's kind of unfair. You have this crazy monster in the back of your room, and then it's like, oh man, yes, I know you have good gear. Yeah, I have good gear too. It's just like it's like this in front of me. You can see it, and you have right in the back. But it's awesome.
Well, we're going to show off some of your gear today for sure. But yes, you have it in the right place. You know, I have it for demonstration. You have it to make amazing hits. For example, this one that you were a part of that we just heard the intro track on. That, I mean, I got this. I mean, I passed out when I heard the number, over 2.8 million views.
Billion.
There, I mean, for
billion.
Billion. Excuse me. There are, for everybody's erudition, there are about 8 billion people on the planet. And this was 2.8 billion views. That's like 35% of the planet has seen this. Like, man, it's insane.
Ridiculous.
So,
ridiculous. Well, the crazy stuff.
You said that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Marek. Yeah, I was saying that.
No, I was just going to say
funny stuff is, I was excited that you guys use as an intro video, because that's what music is about. When it's being recorded and done. Kind of like Diplo called me at night, say, hey, are you down? Do you have a studio tomorrow? I have a writing session. The song is not even finished, but we want to record something. And then we look around. Of course, we had the other studio, the Wind back then. And our recording engineer, I mean, I know how to record, but it's not my job. So I called him and I say, hey, you want to go record for Diplo? He said, oh, I'm busy. I can't. And I even say, you never know, might be a big song. Who knows? And I say, you know what? I'll go. And then I end up spending 11 hours, myself and Scott came and helped me, to actually having fun and recording. And then looking after that, where we see these crazy numbers, it's like, I wish I had a crystal ball that I can say, Diplo, this song is going to be almost 3 billion. Give me $1 million. You know, like, who knows? So, but anyway, yeah, it's amazing what music is. You know, it's not strategic. Sometimes you work on something and it blow up at that level.
That's so cool, man. So today we are going to talk about EDM Stem Mixing. The order of events is we'll roll a video and then we'll do Q&A about it. What Luca and I wanted to mention was this is actually, we cut this back in 2016. I believe it was September 2016. And so it's actually in the old Studio DMI digs before you guys relocated. And I think it'd be interesting because I got to visit shortly after you guys lit up the new spot. And I mean, just friggin', just beautiful place. And you got to start with a blank sheet of paper, which everybody dreams about, as opposed to trying to fix up something that's already screwed up in advance, you know, somebody else's mistakes. And so just talk to people a little bit about that idea about the blank sheet of paper and what you worked with and what you wanted to achieve. And because that was, for me, that was super, super interesting and enlightening when you told me about it.
Appreciate it, Mark. So yeah, so you know, we know that studio, especially for people like myself or you, where music and the environment, it's not a commercial purpose first. It's like a vibey, has to be inspired, to feel good about it. And then through my career, I always felt that at one point, if I had the opportunity to build a new space, as looks and feels modern and relevant for the moment that we are in. And I felt that too many studios, they're like built in the 70s, the 80s, amazing for what their, the purpose was back then. But for somebody like myself that I do mostly dance music, I work essentially with no recording other than one microphone, one lead vocal. What I really need is a place. I love minimalistic approach. So I want a place that is clean. I don't want to see cable around. I don't want to move around the room to EQ a kick drum. I just want to open my arms and have everything in front of me and have a space that surrounds the sweet spot that feels like open, not overly cloudy and over like full of stuff that's been set up there 32 years ago, and now we're going to deal with because the cable they run through the floor and the apparent that 7 feet from this there is a rack, and now I need to live with this rack because it's been placed from somebody in like 1981. I don't want to do that. I want to just do something where it's everything being, it's like a new car, right? So I know it's like a crazy comparison, but I feel this little bit Tesla in a sense of what is the essential, what make you get to the point and optimize the workflow. So that studio can translate that. And also I feel the space as a whole, it's like 4,000 square feet in a way that it's like you go between office and studio and recording and lounge and feel very cohesive, feels like very organic, like every space has the same feel, vibe, lighting, flooring. So I can talk for days. I'm a fan of our spot, of course, but that's kind of like the overall idea.
No, it's and anybody gets a chance to if they're worthy and invited, and you're in Vegas and you Luca, and you get to get a tour or talk to Ronnie, whoever over there. It's a worthy visit. Okay, so I think let's go ahead and I think this is a good tie-in from last week, because last week we had Mike Wells talking about stem mastering, and he happened to mention something about EDM, like, oh, maybe you wouldn't use this so much on stemming out on with EDM style music or whatever. And here ironically we had this queued up for this week where we're talking about stem mastering and EDM specifically. So let's go ahead and roll this tape from, like I said, 2016, and see what Luca was talking about, and then we're going to compare and contrast, and he'll bring us up to date on what he's changed in his new room from then.
Hey guys, how you doing? This is Luca Pretolesi, here at Studio DMI in Las Vegas. Welcome to the studio. I'm a mixer, producer, and master engineer for over 20 years. I'm involved in electronic music in any way, any level. On my music, dealing with pre-processed stems is absolutely normal. This means that I need to have tools that allow me to treat those stems in a very transparent way if I want, but also if I want to add some color and type of texture. And add one unit that allow me to do both, it's essential for me. As far as my routing and just the flow and communication between the DAW and the SAMI is essentially the same way of working in the box using busing system. The difference is instead of sending to a stereo bus, I send to individual output digitally to the Convert 8, from the Convert 8 to my SAMI device. Just finished Borge's new album. The mixing side was very exciting. A lot of featured artists on the record, from Little John, Fatman Scoop, a lot of great singers. All the songs have different personality, and there's a song called Lost and Found. It's kind of challenging, and I was able to use a lot of colors and as well a lot of like dry sound. And I want to just play the song first for you guys and then just break it down a little bit on stems, okay? Let's break it down this mix. It's 45 stems on 8 buses. Let's start solo each bus and rebuild the song from there. Looking for something, looking for something, searching
Searching over and over. Oh, there must be, said there must be something. But we'll find nothing. Till then, we are the lost and found.
Most of the bass stems they receive, they are stereophile, even when they're mono information on the stereo file. But I find myself kind of like trying to fix this kind of pseudo stereo that I don't like much. And in the box, was never being completely happy about the result. On the 2 Bus Plus, I use the channel 9 and 10, which is the dedicated channel for me for the bass. And I'm able to make a real mono bass, and sounds way superior to me. Hey guys,
There we go.
Right on,
that.
man. So
Awesome.
I bet you're happy to be in your new space after seeing the old space again. You're like, oh shoot, I loved it, but this is always better.
The old space was cool, but it was like kind of dark. This is just like, it's just open and more lights, and the AC improvement is crazy in this room. Just feels much better. It's so silent. Sometimes I stop the music and I focus. Let me hear the AC. I can't say yes.
Yeah. I remember in the old spot we used to turn it off when we had to cut video to make it quiet, and then we'd all start sweating to death. Take a break.
I remember that. Yeah, right. Well, I also came out with like noise cancellation techniques, right? So I was capturing for 30 seconds quiet, and then reverse the phase of the noise to cancel the room. Crazy stuff. Anyway.
Right on.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. So I love how you show everybody how you work in the video. Question for you. We were talking about what you've added since then. You've actually expanded on, you're still, I mean, put in your own words, but you're still using that same system, but you've actually expanded the idea.
Correct. It's literally the same setup. I mean, it's kind of like my 1 and 2, 9 and 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, or the 2 Bus Plus. It's almost like it's autopilot the way I run stems through those channels to immediately give me the bass option mono stereo, the kick mono stereo. So 1 and 2, 9 and 10, 13, 14, 15, 16 are my high percussion, low percussion. And it's kind of like in autopilot. I don't even know why, but I feel my hand goes on the 15, 16, open a parallel limiter on the high percussion. And then I go in the box on my output of the group into the 15, 16, and I do a little bit expansion. So I've been doing this more and more, where the parallel limiter has a tone that's really, really good. And when I want to apply that tone, and you're going to like this, Marek. When I like to apply the tone without compression, what I do, I push the parallel limiter and I use an expander to compensate. So I take away the compression, I only get the color. You know what I mean?
Excellent. Yes, we'll talk more about that for sure.
Just the tone, not the compression. When I like to go compression, when I smash low percussion, so I take the snare, the clap, the tom in a group, then I go straight up parallel limiting really hard, and then I gain stage on the way out to say, okay, how much I wanna destroy this group on purpose. And so that never changed. And actually, when I record mixes, it's funny because sometimes we took photos, and we don't even need to take photos of the 2 Bus Plus because it's pretty much is a go-to in the way it treats stuff. Now, something that changed in a good way was like I fall in love with the liaison. I mean, I always had the liaison in mind, that they use a more traditional way to expand a series of inserts on the mastering side, for example. But one point say, what about if we purchase second liaison to do something that actually Studio One inspired me to do? So there was a new update on Studio One with a plugin called Pipeline. Pipeline essentially is a way to go out and come back in as a plugin with no latency in phase. So I'm able to actually use a mix knob on the plugin to bring the dry of the signal that I'm sending out and blend with the wet, and then open a million ideas. So we place a second liaison next to the other one. The other one we're using essentially as an extension of mastering, but we had another one out of the Convert 2, back in on the input 3 and 4 of the AD Plus. So now we have a good use of the second set of inputs on the AD Plus. That way, I'm still out wiring, which is I love to have cable solid connection, and then just switching the input on the AD Plus, allow me to go from capturing the entire mix to just go and capture one source. Most likely, I find myself to treat stems, go out, use some hardware, come back, and then print. So I'm not gonna leave in real time through the mixing process, going out from Pipeline, hit the liaison, choose what gear I wanna kind of like plug in, and then keep in real time. Most likely I'm gonna print it. But the cool thing is that I can switch the input on AD Plus. Now I have another option, which is place between plugin. So if I use a very dedicated filter before, for example, if I use the liaison now with an old SSL compressor, but I want in some way filter when I'm going into the SSL, or try to switch before, after the plugin, a piece of hardware, I'll do really quick. Now, with the liaison having multiple selection, I'm also like to add things. So I have a rack on the side. There's a bunch of old lo-fi vintage gear from the 90s, and I say, okay, great. What about if I stack on serial a couple of like older limiters and just treat as an air drum, and then go back, consolidate. So rendering that audio and then done. Now I kind of like reprocess a stem, and then still I'm gonna go through summing to do the mixing portion, but I make kind of like a decision on individual sounds. Or also do more traditional approach. Like on vocals, I have an Eventide H3000 that I really like the tone of that. And I use as a send, I create an aux, and then I use Pipeline. And on the liaison, I say, okay, is acting as a purely sending to reverb or delay. And then that it's happening, then I have like automation on that I can send on the H3000. I can take group of vocal and decide what to do. So again, with the liaison, having like on and off, first of all, I hate go and take from a patch bay and try to understand the difference. So be able to just like really quick on and off, it's great. So that's kind of like the upgrade, the recent upgrade as far as the system, that it's more on the before mixing type of process than the actual mixing and the summing side.
So that what I like about what you're saying there, and I'm hearing this from a lot of top mix engineers and producers, is that they commit. So it's a commitment to a sound. So the Pipeline and liaison, what it sounds like it allows you to do is audition a bunch of different things very quickly. So what we're seeing on the screen now is on the left we've got a couple of liaisons, and on the right we've got his kind of whack outboard stuff that he can bring in different flavors from. So on the liaison, you can quickly just flip between that Neotech and some DBX stuff and that Dirty Six Dirty compressor in there or whatever, and go ahead and audition some stuff fast, and then commit to it and burn it into the session. So you don't have to go fuck around with recall or anything else later. It's all there hanging out for you, and it's committed to the track. So yeah, that's definitely cool.
I want to add something, Marek, that those gear, it's so hard to recall in general, very hard to recall. Second, with the liaison, the fact that I can flip, so let's say that you see on the rack right now. So I use the preamp of the Neotech to create some distortion. Now I use the MXR limiter to kind of like destroy that. Now, if I really quick, I want to invert, say, okay, what about if I do some limiting first, and then I do some EQing with the Neotech? I don't have to repatch anything. I just simply, from the liaison, I just go before, after, you know what I mean? So I can do flip 1 to 2 or 2 to 1.
Yep, great. And then are you doing any parallel processing with Liaison, or are you running all through?
I do a lot. I do a lot. And for example, that's another thing that I totally underestimate for a very long time. So if I use a unit like an Eventide H3000 or another type of reverb, well, the parallel, it's actually become like a mix knob that you can use to see how much reverb I'm blending with the dry, which is cool because you can do it in the box, but then this is just instantly say, okay, how I feel the two sound. So it's great. I do it that way. I find myself when I exaggerate with SSL and a clone of SSLG, and I exaggerate with that really quick, I can just like parallel and just blend it and say, okay, and find like the sweet spot, you know? So it's fantastic. And we use the 6, the input output 6, when we bring gear from the other room. So, for example, we have a CL1B that we use on the recording side to compress vocal on real time. But sometimes I receive vocal, they need some reshaping, they're all over the place. So we literally take the unit, now it's actually sitting on top of the rack, take the unit, put there, bring a cable, put on the 6 of the liaison, and then now we can just process a vocal, take a unit back, go back to Studio D, and we're done. So it's an easy way to
super handy. Yeah, I love what you're saying. I think a lot of people haven't tried it, don't understand the parallel, how human the parallel knob is, because just like when you're mixing a track with your hands and you're bringing a fader up and down like on a vocal or any instrument, and you find the sweet spot where it tucks in. It's the same thing when you're doing that, because for me, like if I'm adjusting whatever, like a massive passive has a million knobs on it, right? So it's much easier to over EQ than under EQ. Yeah. So you get onto a kick drum or something, and the thing's like Godzilla. You've made it, too huge, larger than life. It's going to go trample the whole city, right? And then you're like, okay, man, reel it in here. You're out of control, and you can put it on parallel and just feel where, okay, that's more realistic, where it sits in the sweet spot. And then, like you said, commit it. It's done, and now you can use that outboard for something else and move on with your life. Okay, we have a couple questions here, so let me throw them your way. So this one is from Jobson. Says, "Hi everyone, Mr. Pretolesi, what's the biggest mistake engineers make that the meters don't reach? -6, -5 LUFS with good punch and clarity in the mix."
Yeah. If you unleash my passion about talking about level, I can talk for like 2-3 hours. So we need to extend this video. But essentially,
I have to be careful.
Yeah, let's do it. So this thing about LUFS, it's getting old. Like, so there is a point. Now, we personally, first of all, I don't care if Spotify will lower my track when it's being uploaded, because this thing about you need to do a version which is -14 LUFS for Spotify, because that's a standard of Spotify. My point is, okay, that's a standard of Spotify today. What about 5 years from now, 7 years from now, that we don't know? They might say, now we go to LUFS -7 or minus whatever. So this is going to be constantly reprocessed. My point is, what I can do to maximize dynamics thanks to Spotify, they're doing this, is not clipping, not limiting. Great, I'll do that. As long I am under 0, let's say -1 peak, and then I don't really care if I'm like -14 or -12 or -11. As long I'm not clipping, so I give dynamic range, I let Spotify decide what they want to do. Lower it, push it up, as long as I'm not clipping. The biggest difference was that going from vinyl CD, you tend to push and use limiting to give this impressive experience. You put a CD on, or you have, let's say in the 90s, you have like multiple CD player, and then you go from one album and the Metallica album hits, and I was like, oh my God, right? So now with Spotify, doesn't matter anymore because now everything is being lowered. So what is the point? If before I was clipping and limiting to get louder, now if I go on Spotify, I don't need to do that. I don't need to compromise my dynamics for Spotify, that's the biggest improvement. Not really necessary about exactly if you are sitting -14 or -10, but as far as not clipping, which is open another conversation, which is when you're using clipping and limiting, that's a stylistic approach. So I do dance music. If I do a bass house, a trap mix, or heavy like EDM mix, they need to translate in a certain way as far as the aesthetic of the mix. So I want to have everything being very compressed and very like in front of the mix. That's a choice. So regardless of Spotify or not Spotify, that's a stylistic approach of mixing where limiting and clipping, it's something that is part of the aesthetic. Versus if you're doing a jazz album, the aesthetic doesn't need to be limiting and clipping. So my point is not really worry about the numbers, worry about what you're trying to achieve. That's the best way that I can explain it.
No, that makes great sense. Two questions that I would have for you are, one, when you're mixing, you're trying to translate things so it'll play and sound, the idea of the artist, the vision in their head, right, gets out there to the people so they can hear it. So are you mixing more to that medium, or are you trying to mix a universal truth that works out across many different mediums?
Yeah, it's a great question. So on EDM, we have a point where a song, it's as an idea, a purpose, which is very typical right now. It's, hey, that's an EDM song, but I have melodies, vocals, background vocal, lead vocal. Can you have the vocal to translate like a pop song, but then the drums and the overall vibe and the arrangement translate as a dance song and an EDM song? So with not great quality mixing happening, that one part tends to overpower the other one. It tends to be like, oh, it's an EDM song and the vocal is a little buried in the back. It's being squashed and limited because you want to translate as an EDM song. So what I usually do, it's a conversation with the producer. What we're trying to achieve. We're looking to have a song that hits super hard on festival clubs, or we want to have a song that's going to be big on streaming, a radio song that also needs to translate well on club and festival. So what is the priority? And then from that point on, we build mix around. So if it's vocal driven, so this song has to be like a pure, clean vocal, very dynamic relationship between lead and background. And then have the rest kind of like float around the vocal. That's a decision. So it's a really strategic, and to me, it's like a very honest, open conversation before we start the mix on being sync and have the same vision.
Yeah, so it's an artistic intention that you start with from the get-go, so you know where you're headed. Perfect.
Yeah.
And then the second question was, since you're talking about mixing into clip, and a lot of those formats don't accept clip, do you use the clip eliminator on the AD Plus?
I use the clip guard, and then what I do, so I always do the monitoring post conversion using that converter as an instrument. That I still see a colleague and friends that I kind of disagree. They say, well, I have a very transparent AD converter, so I don't want to hear. I don't care to listen to the converter. Just mix or do a mastering, and I capture, and then I trust the converter because it's very transparent. Well, I'll say, what about if you have the opportunity to actually listen to the converter sound and manipulate and work with that sound? If you want to go very transparent, the way I go with AD Plus is, okay, I do -4 peak, I have plenty of dynamics, and I'm not worried. But then if I want to push a little harder and just kind of like use it almost as a plugin where I'm clipping, I'm listening what it's doing, and then I do automation through the song to decide when I want to clip, when I want to push, and when I want to go back. And I find myself, for example, to do stuff on that music we call drops, which is like the chorus of the song, where I'm kind of building and I'm using VCAs on my DAW to kind of like pull back maybe 2-3 dB through the verses, having the AD plus doing zero clipping. But then when we hit the chorus, we clip on purpose. And we, of course, we block clipping in the box. So the clipping is happening on the way in, but it's not happening on the way into the DAW. So when I look my true peak, I'm always good. So
right. So Luca's talking about the clip guard function on the Convert AD Plus from Dangerous, that you can turn off the red light in the destination. Cool, man. All right, let's do one more question, and then I want to roll up to our stem mixing on drums. So let's see. Andrew Shaw writes in. He has got to be our #1 viewer. All right. Do you like to master the tracks you mix? Do you like to master the tracks that you mix?
I do. So I'm a mixer engineer and a master engineer. And when people say, well, you can be a master engineer if you're a mix engineer, no, so I'm in a music space where, going back in history, in the 90s, this music was done by one man doing everything to program the drum machine to get to the end stage of this. Now, for me, that I'm doing only post-production, dance music is really about style and certain vibe, where if I'm able to master my mix, I'm able to retain the vision. Versus if that's the point, if I'm participating on an album and I'm one of the mixer engineer, and there's also many Americans doing a mix, another guy's doing another mix, I think it's important to have another guy, which is a mastering guy, that take everyone vision and glue on the final, let me explain this way, is the final translation of the album. So everyone has almost like a way to take photos. But then when we do the final color correction, we want to make sure that we look every photo as a certain vibe that goes through the book. So on the album, on that case, I'm a fan of having an outside master engineer when I'm involved in a project with multiple engineers. So when I work on my mixes, I always ask, and even if the client is not expecting my master, I provide my master, because I want to say, okay, that's what my intention. So even if you go with another engineer, that was my vision.
That's great, brother. That's good insight, and I like the analogies also about the color correction and those things. It's all very useful. Okay, well, cool. Let's roll up into the stem on drums, and because that's a big question people always have.
Absolutely.
On channel 13 and 14 on my 2 Bus Plus, I have my kick bus, essentially 2-3 kicks through this song. It's going through a bus into the 2 Bus Plus. Now, I tend to use harmonic distortion from the real beginning, give a certain tone, certain color, and just make mixing decision into that. I'm able to do less in the box. At the same time, I'm making decision based on my final result, my final sound. So harmonic distortion, it gives me richness to the sound. It doesn't really enhance a part of the kick, the tail, or the attack, the transient. It just gives like certain thickness. Now, any decision that I'm making into that is more gentle, and then I'm able to retain more like an organic sound in some way. Let's play the kick with or without harmonic distortion. Important, if you have a good headphones or studio speakers, there's like low frequency information, hard to translate on a laptop computer or iPhone, all right? Also, we're gonna make a really short loop of the kick, so be able to really listen to the difference, all right? Let's check it out. On my percussion bus, I love use the parallel limiter. Back in the days, it was a distressor, 1176, any other tools to try to do parallel compression. Again, problem we recall, cables, and a lot of issues when you deal with old gear. Today we have into the Summit a parallel limiter. Now, what I try to achieve is essentially take all the low information on that particular bus up into the mix without compromising anything. So I don't want to really destroy my transient. I just want to bring some energy up, blend it when I feel good, and then if it's necessary, even lower than the level a little bit when I feel that all my low level information are up on the mix. Let me show you. All right, guys, let's play percussion with a parallel limiter with the entire mix open. Okay, I'm gonna start fully 100%, very exaggerated on purpose, and then we're gonna scale down and find like the sweet spot. Hey guys, was super cool to have you guys here hanging out with me at the studio. Thanks for watching. Luca Pretolesi, StudioDMI.com. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Go.
So we have right off the bat, we've got a question from, well, American pronunciation, Jolin Rodriguez, or with a Latin pronunciation, Julian Rodriguez. He says, I work with a D-Box Plus. He says,
Yeah.
which elements would you suggest for grouping for EDM? Since remember, he's only got 4 stereo channels, not 8 like you have, or 8 mono, not 16 like you have. What would you recommend grouping for EDM? Any scenarios where you would dedicate channels 7 and 8 for many materials such as kick or snare?
Correct. Yes, I will do. I will do 7 and 8 kick. Little thing about the mono is the fact that the D-Box translate good as the 2-bus plus as far as the mono. There is no way, and I can try to match the gain in the box to do the fake mono of the DAW. Doesn't work and doesn't give you the same sense. So I would say strongly recommend to use, at least to have the option to turn your kick in mono. So 7, 8. I will do 1 full percussion minus the kick drum. So we leave the kick drum 7, 8, and we do, let's say, the all percussion on 1 and 2. We do all the synths on 3 and 4, and we do all the vocal on 5 and 6. And in that, it's kind of like the streamlined version of kind of what I do. The option also is, if you have a D-Box, and let's say you have a couple of additional piece of gear that you like, that can be, of course, something more like a back CQ that you want to kind of like treat the entire mix. But let's say you have some old vintage gear that you like on the D-Box. Take one, let's say the 5 and 6, blend the vocal with the synth on 3 and 4, keep the 5 and 6, and use as a parallel. So you put the insert, so you go out of your converter, you go into a compressor that you like, all SSL, and then you go on 5 and 6. There we go. Now you have parallel compression analog. You run the same stem double. Let's say you run your percussion double, and on that one with SSL, you blend the level in. So you can be very creative, even having like 8 output of the D-Box.
Awesome. So what you're talking about is just setting that up as a dedicated send, and then you can send whatever you want over there to use it as a parallel. Yeah, great. No, good.
That's a good idea.
Excellent.
And when I work with 8, essentially is that I do a kick, all percussion, all synths, and all vocals.
Cool. In the video, you talked about using harmonics, and you talked about using the paralimiter. What about transformer at all? Do you ever find yourself using the custom Cinemags in there, transformers?
I do. There is certain things that I like to do on the early stage, the real beginning, and the transformer is one of those. So if I make a decision at the beginning and I mix through that, it's kind of like translate the sound in a way that I cannot forget that I have a transformer on, and then all my decisions, and I build the mix into that, and what sounds more organic and put together. If I add at the end of the mix, sometimes I'm not getting the best result because now I have less flexibility. I'm getting and I'm adding harmonics after a lot of harmonics has been already added through the process. If I do as a first and I mix through that, I'm getting better result.
Great. And how would you say your approach differs when you said you like to master the track that you've mixed. So how are you putting on that different mastering hat? What's your philosophy sort of behind it, and how are you how are you preparing yourself for that different journey that you're going to go on?
Absolutely. Most of the time, first of all, I try to always have for myself a break between the two processes. I tend to avoid to do mastering late at night after a day of bombarding, 50 hertz for like 7 hours. So I try to kind of like if I have the luxury to just go back the next day, I'll do it. And usually what I do, I go almost as a client. I listen to the mix and I take quick notes. And am I taking mixing notes, mastering notes? If I have mixing notes, like, oh, I feel the reverb is too low on the mix, I'm not trying to fix those as a mastering engineer. I go back into the mix, do additional changes to make sure that when I have the master engineer hat, that is just purely mastering. So I'm using the luxury to have an entire mix open to make final little tweak before I do the mastering. Now, let's say I'm having only mastering notes, which is the overall mix sounds great, but it's not bright enough or is not wide enough for the mid-range. Then it's purely mastering. I'm not going to change the nature of the mix to apply something that I can do a nice shelf on the top and bring the top end up an entire mix, which is mastering. So, and I try to be very detached. I try when I do that, I'll do it, and I do an objective A and B with the mix, lowering the level of the master, measure the level, make sure that I'm not tricked by loudness. And then what I'm doing is an additional value of the mix, not just based on the loudness, but the overall sound.
Neat. Makes good sense. Good sense. And what percentage would you say of your clients where you're mixing the record follow through all the way through to use you to master also? Just ballpark.
Oh, no. Most of them, it's less on pop music and almost everyone on dance music. There's certain things that I do with loudness, still very relevant for club and festival use, that it's like me doing something on mastering because I know what I did on the mixing side. So for example, I like to do clipping and do expansion that is based on certain area of the mix. And I do sometimes expansion post-clipping. So essentially, I almost flat the waveform. And then I say, okay, let's regain a little bit of dynamic on the edge of the snare. Let's do a little bit of this on the movement on the hats. So, and I do that. And it's kind of like what makes me unique because I approach mastering knowing what I was trying to achieve as a mixing engineer. So on dance music, I do a lot.
Yeah, you should talk a little bit more about the clipping thing since it's so controversial. Like what you were talking earlier about that you prefer why not use it as a sonic the sonic timbre for it, which I agree very much with. When someone gives me a new piece of gear, company comes to me and says, hey, we'd like you to take this out into the real world, and the first thing I always say is, look, just send it to me with a return label because I probably won't like it, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to abuse it, so I'm going to shove, too much level into it or this or that, or turn the EQ up all the way, to see what happens. So, because you want to know what it's capable of and what its limitations are, right? So, so I agree with you in that philosophy. But I guess maybe explain what you're looking for when you're pushing a converter clip. Why you would do that? Why you have to get it there? Why you can't get it in some other stage?
Right. So I was not really happy about clipping weak converters for many, many years. I do remember, as today, when we received the 80 Plus coming from another fantastic converter, and almost like before that, we normalized what we can achieve of clipping converter, which has always been very passionate about. And we thought like, oh, that's actually good. We can do that. When we understand we can use a converter as almost like as a limiter / clipping. So shave a little bit the envelope if I need it, but then clip, and then automate how much we're pushing, having more space, more headroom, more space to clip. A lot of converters back then, they have this like hard ceiling where you're clipping, the sound it's all right, and then at one point breaks. That's it. It was just like almost like one trick pony. You do it, goes all right, and then you push a little bit more and just distorting. 30 Plus, the news and the big upgrade was to be able to give a different depth and different like level of clipping, from more subtle clipping, which is like hit the peaks on the percussion, to do more like, I'm not kidding, like L2, almost brick wall type of effect. And now we say, okay, now we're going to put less stress on every other limiter or plugin clipper that we have. So now what we do, can I talk about the crest factor, which is that's the point. The crest factor is, so you have the average level, you have the peak. So the peak of your waveform and the average, that's the crest factor between the two. So now if I'm able on the clipping side, so from the AD, to reduce that and make us like the average between the average level to the peak level smaller, and retain the sonic impact of that. So I'm not going to compromise the quality. I'm going to just reduce that. Now, everything in the box will translate way more natural. So when you take a plugin, you do 1 dB of clipping, like anything, the Fab Filter Pro L, anything, sounds all right. The problem it's happening when you go 5 dB of limiting, because you really want to squeeze the level, you want to get up to, I don't know, -7, -5 RMS, and then you start to compromising. Now, the biggest improvement for me was on the way in, making a decision when I get a loud tracks. I want to go kind of like a gain staging of clipping, where, okay, I hit the first one, that is the 80 Plus, and then now I'm shaving the first 1.5 dB, 2 dB. Now on the way in, now when I have this waveform that is nice, but it's not completely square, I can be creative. I can do another set of clipping with a plugin, and then do a little bit expansion with a dynamic EQ just on certain frequency, where I kind of like tweak, and I kind of like in some way change the perception, where everything is very clean and clipped and like in front of the mix, and almost like compress and without much dynamics. But then you have the snare that's cutting through, because now I'm doing expansion just on the snare. All that, it's impossible to do it before. I gotta like clip the converter, go back in and do it after. So same techniques we plug in work. It just almost like a nice. Today we are about photos and cameras. So a nice shot of this fantastic camera. Then when you do color correction with Photoshop, few little things looks amazing, versus a cheap iPhone 3 that you say, oh, that's okay. I'm gonna do color correction, will be okay. Now, because that will still look flat and small and less depth. That's what it is. So doing analog clipping on the way in, it gave me the better possible version of clipping, essentially. And then after that, it's just little tweak and little automations. Talk too much, Marek. I talk too much.
No, that I always learn something, man, when you're talking. So I shut up and listen. So okay, we've got a couple of more questions in here coming in. We've got some time for. So from Aklana, and I hope I don't screw up your name there. I apologize if I did. Everybody screws up mine, so we're even. All right. What about your last room in the video that we saw, which is not perfect?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that room and still deliver #1 mixes?
Oh man, see the big upgrade on this room that I'm faster because I have less concern and I trust the room, the environment better. So on the old room was okay, it was good, and the quality was still great. It was just me spending more time to make sure that what I was actually listening, what room was telling me was right, and the room was okay. It again, it just it's almost like an infinite games. I mean, and there is way better room than this, and there's of course there's going to be another better room in the future. It's just more like be an environment that makes you feel well and confident and comfortable. And now in this room, I feel better. But on the old room, I mean, so many hits, and even you go back on history, and even on my stuff, I was making great sounding record with cheaper gear. But obviously, when I go on today's setup, I mean, it's an upgrade. It's exponential. It's from the quality of the work to the actual me enjoying the process of mixing, of working. It's just being improved. You know, like having fun. It just drive a car to give you joy. You still go to work. You do the same, 5 miles, but you go 5 miles with joy. That's what it is.
So do you feel like did you do confidence mixes before? Did you have to check your mix in other places, or did you just work with the room, understand its limitations, and just like you said, it took you more time and you had to probably be super attentive and more careful, or did you have to go check it in other places and now you don't have to do that because you trust the gear and the space?
Yeah, I was checking more laptop and iPhone before. Now I don't do anymore. I'm done. And then this biggest improvement in this room is low end. So everything that I do on the low end, I trust more what I'm listening right away, especially in dealing with heavy stuff like 808 drums and all that area between 40 and 120. It translates much better. So I'm actually faster on mixing drums on this room.
Great. Okay, let's see what else we got here. We've got another question from Julian. How do you work with your effects sends? Do you sum those separately or print them directly along with their respective tracks? So do you print them with the instruments themselves or separately from the instruments?
I always try to sum all the effects separately. Also, let's keep in mind that I receive sometimes effects stems. So the producer is in love with a reverb they choose to use on the vocal, on the demo. The singer is married to that. It's like, please don't change the reverb. I'm not going to reinvent the reverb. So I'm actually using a reverb stems. What I do to keep more separation, let's say I have the 5 and 6 on the 2 Bus Plus, which is my clean channel that's dedicated to reverbs, delay, time-based stuff that I don't want to kind of like overwhelm like one output of my DAW with too much stuff and hit, in some way kill too much headroom in the box going out, adding reverb on top of the vocal, on top of delay, on top of background. I find myself to separate, to keep the process, but clean with no reverb, vocal stems and the effects returns separated. So I do that. Now there is cases now where, let's say we have a background that there is a reverb or a process background vocal that's being processed together. Then I treat that as the lead. So, but I keep separated. When I do my send on my Vala reverb, or in case of the H3000, I like to sum those on separate stereo stem.
Very cool. All right, brother. Well, I think we're at the end of our hang here, man. I appreciated it. I hope everybody else appreciated it as well. Like I said, I always learn something from you, and I hope we're going to be face to face before the end of the year, assuming things things allow it. I'll bring my friends here with me, to come visit.
Man.
So
exactly. All right. Well,
on.
thank you for the opportunity. Always good to talk with you, and I mean, and talk what is like feed, and my passion is gear. So it's just always a great opportunity, great time.
Yeah, man. No, it always comes through. All right, a quick plug for the next Platinum Legacy for next Friday. We've got Benvento and Chris Godby mixing reggaeton to Timberlake with the Dangerous System. So nice, great broad spectrum of music there. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you.
See you guys.